25 centuries ago, beneath a fig tree in what is now Bihar, a man sat down. He had tried everything the world offered to end the suffering he saw around him. None of it had worked. And so he simply sat. What he observed that night, the world is still learning. What he observed that night, the world is still learning. The Buddha's first teaching was not a consolation. It was an observation. He called it dukkha, often translated as suffering, but the original meaning is more precise: the condition of being unsatisfied, the persistent gap between what is and what we wanted it to be. Not illness, not crisis. The background hum of a mind that has not yet learned to be still. He was not describing the exceptional moments of grief. He was describing Tuesday morning, the ordinary ache of an ordinary day. Every person in every clinic I have worked in has described this feeling without ever having a name for it. He gave it a name 25 centuries ago. The world is still learning. Modern neuroscience has a name for it too. The default mode network, the brain's resting state circuitry, activates when we are not focused on a task. It generates self-referential thought, comparison, rumination, regret, the mind turning on itself, looking for a problem to solve, even when there is none. A 2011 study by Judson Brewer found that experienced meditators showed significantly quieter activity in exactly these regions. The restless mind that creates dukkha has a neurological address. He named it before we found it. The second truth named the source. Samudaya, the arising. Tanha, the thirst. Not just for things, for experiences, for certainty, for the feeling to last or to end. The Buddha observed something precise here. He said the suffering does not come from the wanting itself. It comes from the clinging, the holding on to what is passing, the pushing away of what is arriving. A leaf falls. The suffering is not in the falling. It is in the hand that reaches out to stop it. The practice he offered was not to kill desire. It was to see it clearly, honestly, without immediately obeying it. A man once approached him on the road. He had seen something in the way he walked, something in the quality of his presence. He asked, "Are you a god?" The answer was simple, "No." "Then what are you?" "I am awake." Not divine, not supernatural. A human being who had learned to see clearly. The third truth is perhaps the most misunderstood. Nirodha, cessation. Not suppression of feeling, not numbness, not the performance of peace. The actual settling of a mind that has stopped fighting itself. The Buddha used the image of a flame. When a flame goes out, we do not ask where it went. It simply ceases to consume. The suffering mind is not punished into peace. It is seen so clearly, understood so honestly. that it no longer needs to be fought. In psychiatry, we call this the difference between suppression and regulation. One pushes the feeling down. The other understands it until it loses its grip. The Buddha taught regulation 2.5 millennia before we had the word. The practice the Buddha prescribed, he called it Sati. Awareness, presence, the simple act of knowing what is happening while it is happening. Not analysis, not judgment, just noticing. In 2011, Britta Hölzel at Harvard Medical School found that 8 weeks of mindfulness practice produced measurable increases in the thickness of the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for perspective, regulation, and considered response. The brain was physically reshaping itself towards the capacity the Buddha described. Sarah Lazar at Massachusetts General found the same. Long-term practitioners showed structural differences in regions governing attention and interoception. The awareness he prescribed was not a spiritual exercise. It was, and the research confirms this, a structural intervention in the architecture of the mind. And then, Karuna. Compassion, not pity, not sentiment. The active wish that suffering in another ends. The Buddha placed compassion at the center of the path, not as a moral instruction, but as a natural consequence of seeing clearly. When you truly see that another person's suffering arises the same way yours does, from the same craving, the same clinging, the same restless mind, the separation between you and them becomes very thin. Antoine Lutz and Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin studied long-term compassion practitioners. They found activation in the anterior insula, the brain's empathy architecture, at levels not seen in non-practitioners. A compassionate mind is not just kinder, it is neurologically distinct. Kindness changes the brain, not as metaphor, as measurable fact. The brain that learns to stop judging becomes more itself. Karuna is not something you practice until you become compassionate. It is what remains when the judging quiets. The mind that has stopped finding itself guilty naturally stops finding others guilty too, not as a moral achievement, as a simple consequence of seeing clearly. The non-judgmental mind, the meditative mind, is not a mind that has become indifferent. It is a mind that has become honest enough to see that everyone, including itself, is doing the best it can from where it stands. That seeing, the Buddha called Karuna. We might simply call it rest. As a psychiatrist, I sit with minds in distress every working day. I use medication. I use evidence-based psychotherapy. I use what the clinical literature has carefully built. And I have also learned, over years of this work, that the person who first described what I see in my clinic was sitting beneath a tree in Bihar 25 centuries ago. He did not have an MRI. He did not have a DSM. He had something rarer. The the patience to observe the mind without immediately trying to fix it. On this Buddha Purnima, the full moon that marks his birth, his awakening, and his passing, we remember a mind that chose to stay awake so that others might rest. He had seen something in the way he walked, something in the quality of his presence. He had seen something in the way he walked. He had seen something in the quality of his presence. I want to ask you one thing. Not about doctrine, not about belief. From everything the Buddha observed, the awareness, the compassion, the simple act of noticing, what is one small thing you might bring into your day? Not as a practice, not as a resolution, just as a quiet experiment in feeling more alive. Tell me in the comments. I will read everyone.